I'm Erin Daly, and on behalf of myself and Jimmy May, I'd like to welcome you to this segment of the Good Legal Stories series, a corollary to the Good Stories movement, sponsored by the Normandy Chair for Peace. As you may know, the Normandy Chair for Peace's motto is, "We will have peace on earth when we have peace with the earth." The Good Legal Stories series spotlights landmark environmental cases from around the globe through the voices of those who worked on and decided the cases. And who better to speak about the good that environmental law can do than Tony Oposa, the man who is literally and figuratively the father of environmental litigation. Jimmy, over to you.
Thank you, Erin, and thanks everyone for joining us for what will be just a fantastic segment as part of the Good Legal Stories movement. I'm so proud to be able to introduce, as Erin mentioned, somebody who's the father in many ways of environmental law and the environmental movement, including environmental human rights, Tony Oposa. So Tony's here to talk to us about two cases, but before I mention those, a very quick bio, and you can read more about him on the website, of course, if you don't know about him already. But Tony is in a lot of ways, again, the founder of environmental human rights litigation and enforcement through the two cases he's going to talk about, the children's case, also known as Minors Oposa versus Factoran, and the Manila Bay case. Tony's a graduate of the University of Philippines School of Law and also has a master's degree from Harvard. He has taught law for a quarter of a century at lots of institutions, including the University of Philippines, Ateneo, also in the Philippines, Vermont School of Law in the United States, Pace University School of Law or Halp School of Law in the United States, and also the University of Hawaii, Richardson School of Law. And it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you, Tony, and to turn the floor over to you to tell us about these good legal stories. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, James. Very good to see you, even if you're 10,000 miles away. So let me instead, tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. First, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, can you see it now? There. Are we okay? Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yes, now we can see the map.
Yeah, so let's look at the world. The Philippines is there on the right side, very small group of islands, but it is one of the mega diversity countries of the world that hold 80%, almost all of the biological wealth on Earth. And it is so wonderful that a book that was published not even by a Filipino, but by the University of Chicago, that is a page out of the book. It says it is reasonable to think of the Philippines as the Galapagos Islands multiplied tenfold. Can you imagine that? And this is how it was in 1900. Then, using the paradigm of progress and development, which is nothing more than the extraction and consumption, a colonial power came in 1900 and took over the Philippines and started cutting down all our trees. And then in 1988, I was a very young lawyer. I saw that what happened to our forests became like this. There were 800,000 hectares left virgin forest in the Philippines. And government, during the time of, before 1988, it was not Factoran. It was during the time of Marcos that they gave away so many logging concessions. Logging was only being done in virgin forests, in old growth forests. There were only 800,000 hectares left, but there were logging concessions to an area of almost 4 million hectares. And we were cutting them down at the rate of 120,000 hectares per year. That is not me talking, that was the government those are government data. And I said, my eldest son then was 3 years old. And I said, by the time this guy gets to be 10 years old, he's not going to see any forest anymore. And so I said, it was not just a shot at the moon, but it was a shot at Pluto. I gathered children, my own children, my friends, relative children. I said, we'll sue the government. Why? And remember that logging was then the most powerful industry in the Philippines that had practically all the politicians in their pockets. So I filed that case in, naming the children as the real parties in interest. The real parties in interest is defined in law as the persons who will suffer irreversible damage and irreparable injury. It was just a theory. It was just an idea. So of course I filed that case, and then after 1 year, the government dismissed it. But to the credit of Jun Factoran, the named defendant, I will tell you more about it after this. So it was dismissed in the lower court. And that is when I realized that failure is not only success has 1,000 fathers. Failure is not only an orphan, because when you fail, even your own shadow will abandon you. And so but in between, the Secretary Factoran used that case as a leverage to cancel all the logging concessions in the remaining old growth forests of 800,000 hectares, and shifted logging to the secondary growth forest. So I already won the point of what I wanted to do. I mean, to save the remaining 800,000 hectares of forest. But one point that I could not accept was that the lower court said that the children did not have personality to sue. So I said, you know, of course I have no funding, I have nothing, I was jobless, penniless. I've always been jobless and penniless. And so I went all the way to the Supreme Court without even knowing how to file an appeal. I filed an appeal all the way to the Supreme Court, and fortunately, it landed on the desk of a man who has the heart for the earth. And so the issue was whether or not the children, because the case, I framed the case that the children were filing the case in behalf of themselves and on behalf of future generations. I did not even know that there was such an animal called intergenerational responsibility. It was only after I lost the case when I ran across the book of Edith Brown Weiss that said intergenerational responsibility. I cannot even pronounce it. But I felt so happy that the crazy idea that I had a name after all. It had a name after all. So I filed that appeal in the memorandum. The question was whether or not children and future generations had the right to sue. And then the Supreme Court said, through the poetic pen of then very junior justice, later became Chief Justice, he said their personality to sue in behalf of succeeding generations can only be based on the concept of intergenerational responsibility. And how did they find that out? Because it was such a crazy idea from a very young lawyer who did not know what he was doing. I sent the whole book to the Supreme Court so that they will say I'm not as stupid as I look. So they discovered that idea that it had a name after all. And I was happy that there was a name after all. And then it was I was anchoring my argument on the constitutional provision that said the state shall protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. I said the right of the people. There is a right of the people, therefore. And if the people has a right, even more right, children have right and future generations. So then the Supreme Court, one of the passages of the Supreme Court, it says, because the argument of the government, not by Factoran, but by the Office of the Solicitor General, said that it is not even in the Bill of Rights. It is just in the state policies. So it's not a right. But the Supreme Court said that if they are now, these rights are now mentioned, especially mentioned in the fundamental law of the land, it is because unless it is written in the Constitution itself, the day would not be too far when all else would be lost, not only for this generation, but also for succeeding generations, generations which stand to inherit nothing but a parched earth incapable of sustaining life. That was 3 decades ago. It was prophetic, and that is what is happening now. We've seen parched earth, we've seen fire all over. But I lost that case because the case said, go back to the trial court and implead all the logging concessions. Of course, that was my initial strategy, was how do I file a case against 92 of the most powerful corporations in the world? I said I would just change my strategy and instead initiate the legal action against the person, I mean not the person, but the institution that granted those logging concessions in grave abuse of discretion. There are only 800,000 hectares, and now the government granted to 4 million hectares. So that's grave abuse of discretion. So I didn't even bother to read that, because when I saw the dispositive portion, it said, go back to the trial court. But then later on, about 2 weeks later, I read the case, and then they said, oh, it contained a few gems of words. And we owe this to John Boyd. The world knew about it because of John Boyd. Internet was only, email was only starting then. He was the one who spread it around. Also with, I'm sorry, not John Boyd, John Bonine. John Bonine. He was the one who spread it around. And this started, well, the practical value of this was that, as I mentioned, Secretary Factoran, a man with a real heart, canceled the logging concessions in the old growth forests. And then in 1992, when the case was pending, the National Integrated Protected Areas Law was passed, which made the remaining old growth forests the core component of the protected areas. Of course, my case was to cancel all logging concessions in the Philippines. Again, it is not a shot at the moon, it is shot at Pluto. It took 1 generation in 2012 that the government finally heard what I was talking about. And it was only in 2012 that logging was banned in the Philippines. And now they are now doing the National Greening Program. So that's the practical value of it. And but it is all by chance. I always say that when you try what your heart truly believes in, one day the stars are just going to align. And the stars indeed aligned because Secretary Factoran had the heart for it, and it landed on the table of a man, I call him the son of the soil, of later Chief Justice Hilario Davide. So, as rich as our land is, our sea is even richer. This is a book, 6-volume book, that studied where is the richest marine waters in the world. It's the Coral Triangle of influence that runs from north of the Philippines to Malaysia and Indonesia all the way to Vanuatu. But further studies showed that the Philippines is the center of marine biodiversity on Earth. This is the triangle from the Philippines down to Malaysia and Indonesia, all the way to New Guinea. And further study shows, again, this is not Filipinos studying it. It's my friend Ken Carpenter, who I later met. He said he discovered that the Philippines, he called it the center of marine biodiversity on Earth. And at that red portion that you see is the center of marine biodiversity on Earth. That beach that you see at my back is somewhere in the middle, and in the north of this, there is this part here that's like a bay in the northernmost part of the red part of that red shaded portion. That's Manila Bay. It is the apex of the richest marine waters on Earth. And what did we do? We turned it into a toilet bowl. We were dumping 16 million liters of raw, untreated sewage every day into Manila Bay, plus the solid waste. I had just came from my school from my LLM in America, a fancy school, and instead of developing a practice, making a ton of money, I gave up my law practice, and 3 months later, I initiated a case against not 11, 13 government agencies to compel these government agencies to clean Manila Bay. And again, it was a shot at the moon. I did not even tell anybody about it because they would say, just as they said in that children's case, that I was out of my mind. I truly am probably out of my mind. But then I don't care about my mind. I care about my heart. I love the sea and I want it clean. So we took 10 years of litigation without any funding, without any support from anyone. But I would like to mention that the only person who knew about it, who I told about it, was our guru of gurus, Nick Robinson. And he supported me so much. He supported moral support. He invited me to go to Pace Law School, and meet with the water keepers like Bobby Kennedy and Carl Copland. So at least I found that there are other people in the world who are doing the same thing. So it was all a very, very painful process because I was jobless, I was penniless, and I refused to accept any funding because I do not want any pressure to win a case. I'm doing this for fun. So if somebody gives me money to do it, then it's not going to be fun because I'll have to account for it and I will have to be pressured to win it. And I'll have to explain why I lost it. So I went ahead for 10 years. And let me share with you a little story. On the 8th year, and just to file a petition with 13 government agencies, 11 because two withdrew later, and acceded that they will clean up. So there were only 11 government agencies left. And I asked a mentor, a senior person who was an artist and also a lover of the earth. I said, Auntie Odette, her name is Odette, she's passed on, but I said, Auntie Odette, what am I doing? I am a graduate of UP Law. I received the United Nations Award. I have a master in some fancy school. And here I am a lawyer of the fish who do not pay attorney's fees. And I am, desperate. I'm tired. I'm hopeless and helpless. It was the almost 9 years. All of a sudden, we had an oral argument in the Supreme Court, and instead of arguing about the law and this and that, people versus so-and-so, I told them a story, just like what I'm telling you now, that this is the center of marine biodiversity on Earth, and we have turned it into a toilet bowl, which we do not even bother to flush. And it made the papers. And this lady told me, and I would like to share it with the lawyers listening. She said, don't worry, Tony. because a lawyer who defends the earth has God for a client. I said, wow, that gave me the moral courage to go on. And just when you're about to give up, don't give up, because sometimes miracles happen. So after 10 years, short of 1 month, December 2008, the Supreme Court and bank, unanimous decision of the Supreme Court, ordered all the government agencies to make Manila Bay swimmable again. Let me just give you a little technical stuff. To be swimmable, for a body of water to be swimmable, it must have a fecal coliform. I'm sorry if people are eating there. A fecal coliform standard is 100 MPN, most probable number. Let's just say 100 units. When I filed that case in 1999, January, the fecal coliform was 1 million. Can you believe that? And then, of course, and then I was able to convince the court to pass what is now known as a continuing mandamus. And again, just before I went to the hearing in the afternoon, this was before WhatsApp and Viber, I talked to Derwood Zelke, and I said, I want to tell them that to make this a living decision, that to make it continuously until it becomes clean. And he supported me. Derwood supported me. He says, yes, you tell them that, you can order it now, but when all of these people go home, they will just forget it. But if it is a continuing thing, it will be remembered all throughout. Okay, so fine. 1999 up to that is the decision was 2008 December, so 10 years or 1 month short of 10 years. And in 2018, I forgot all about it, but there was supposed to be a committee to monitor it. I forgot all about it. In 2018, the fecal coliform was 1 billion. Can you believe that? 1 billion. It was pure, you know what. So I said, well, I've done my share, let others begin to care. I can't do much anymore. So, to the credit of this administration, they took on the job, and the Secretary of the Department of Environment launched a Manila Bay cleanup case in January 27, 2019. It was almost January 30. I filed that case in January 30. And they took it on. Since 2019, and even during the pandemic, they were cleaning it up. Last week, and this, I called Nick Robinson about it. The Undersecretary and I talked. He says, you can't believe it, sir. So what? He says, from 1 billion, it is now down to 450. I said, what, 450 million? 450,000? He says, no, sir, it is 450. As in, we're short of 300 units to become swimmable. I said, wow. I called up Nick Robinson right away. I said, well, all our efforts have not been in vain after all. So that's the function of a legal action. I don't call it litigation. I call it legal action, because litigation is so adversarial. I call it legal action. Law, it is based on law, and it is action, not discussion. Legal action lights a star. What is a star? First, it tells a story. The story of the children's case tells the story that we need to take care of the earth, because our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren and future generations will need to drink water, will need to breathe air, and will need to eat food. Same story with the Manila Bay case, that we have the richest marine waters, and what are we doing with it? We're turning it into a sewage area. It tells a story, and that's the ultimate. It tells a story. I am not a lawyer. I am only a storyteller. Words are my paintbrushes. Law is my medium, and probably the courtroom is the canvas of my art. And two, it puts the issues on the table for proper and orderly discussion. If we talk on social media or on CNN, nobody's gonna listen to me anyway. But in a court, we will put it on the issue of the table. We will put the issues on the table for proper, orderly discussion backed by evidence. And we are not going to shout at each other. We are going to be polite because we are going to properly discuss it. And A stands for action. Somehow or other, that case, win or lose, it will spark action. And I shared with you the action that Secretary Factoran did, and the stars aligned. I learned about intergenerational, and a law was passed to protect the protected area system of the Philippines. And R stands for resolution. One way or another, win or lose, sooner or later, there will be a resolution. I don't care if I lose. All I care about is that we are able to tell a story, because there is nothing more powerful than a story, than a good story, to inspire and set hearts on fire. Thank you. Okay.
Tony, thank you so much. Again, I love the story. I heard it for the first time through John Bonine as well, at least 20 years ago, and it just gives me chills every time to hear it. Thank you. And it's also inspired not just litigators, but children all over the planet to challenge governmental inaction, not only about biodiversity protection and about species conservation, but of course about the cases in Oregon, the Outer Children's Trust case, cases before the Committee on the Rights of the Child, cases before courts in the Netherlands and Ireland and Norway, and in Germany and Australia, all around the globe. Tony, draw from that little bit of inspiration that you had that led to this incredible story to change the way law is used and legal action and legal stories are told all around the globe. But so just, thank you so much. I just love also hearing about how you were jobless and penniless through much of this journey and the impact that you've made. Tony, just as we come to a close here, what advice or thoughts do you have for the next generation of people who are concerned about the planet?
First of all, I have reframed the word environment because environment is not understood. When you, even until now, when you say I am an environmentalist, people think I am a hippie, especially when you're a lawyer. I call it the sources of life, of land, air, and water. LAW, easy to remember, the law of life. Do we want our children to drink water? Then let's protect the watershed and let's take care of the waters so that they will still be drinkable. Do you want them to breathe poisoned air? Then if not, then let's take care of the air. Let's stop using all these fossil fuel burning cars and electricity. Let's stop all this burning. We're burning the earth. And do we want them to eat food? Then let's take care of the soil. So, my friends, when we understand that the environment is not about the birds and the bees, the flowers and the trees and the monkeys and the donkeys, when we understand that it is about life, and you, Jim and Erin, you have been working all your lives to express this idea, to share this idea of the human right to the environment. But, well, that's very, very laudable. But now my only message is, let us care for the law of life.
That's so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing this story and for the hard work you've done. You make it seem like it was so simple and that it was just passion that drove you, and the smiles of the little children whose pictures you shared with us. And in fact, we know it was really, really many years of very, very hard work. And not only hard work to succeed in the litigation, but then also hard work in the following years to make sure that the cases would be, that the verdicts would be implemented and that there would be follow through and that we don't regress, and that we keep pushing forward. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how to encourage lawyers in particular to sort of see the place of litigation in this broader effort.
Well, first of all, let me repeat that line that said, a lawyer who defends the earth has the great spirit. Let us not call it God, has the great spirit for a client. And my friends, do not think about, the lawyers especially, do not think about winning or losing. Think about telling a story. Words are your paintbrushes. Law is the medium by which you can tell a story. And the courtroom is the canvas of our art of storytelling. And when we are able to tell the story, that is all that matters. It's all about the stories. That is why we started this good stories movement, especially at the time when, well, I started this many years ago in a small gathering. I said, you know, I've been fighting. I've spent my life trying to fight and right the wrong. Now, let us shine the spotlight on the good, the right, and the strong.
Well, we've certainly done that today. Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you for launching this program of good stories, because it helps light a star or stars all over the globe. Thank you again. Aaron, anything else to close with?
Well, yeah, after your recording, yeah, I will invite you to Hawaii. We will have a planning meeting for the good legal, how to roll out the good stories movement all throughout the world.
Okay. So for now, let me just thank those of you who watched the program in this latest installment of the Good Legal Stories movement as part of the Good Stories movement of the Normandy Chair for Peace, which Tony chairs. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for joining us. So long.
Thank you. Yeah.